Sunset Division, you've been waiting so patiently, but don't worry. It's happening. I'm here with Don. Say hello.
What's up?
And special guest, Cowtown.
Hello, everyone.
And that's it. Don, take it away.
Okay, so for this first team, we have a substitute who's taking over for the Sydney Sylveons. It's the Philadelphia Porygonz. Before we really get into these power rankings, we're not going to put the PZs over any other team because we haven't seen them play yet. So what we're going to do is just kind of do a brief team analysis, talk about where we think the team's going to go this season, things we like about the team, things we dislike, and then we're going to get into the proper power rankings from there. So I guess with that said, this team kept the top four of the Sydney Sylveons, which was like... Actually, no, it didn't keep the top four. Switched it around a bit. The Bloodmoon wasn't there.
Kept the moon, though.
But, yeah. So basically what happened was Jarvisimo swapped the Wellspring that was on this team for a Hearthflame, which, in my opinion, is just a pretty objective downgrade. And dropped the Donphan and grabbed a Terra Garganackle, which Terra Garganackle is really good. But in my opinion, it's kind of a Terra Hog, and when you have Salamence on the team too, they're both going to be kind of fighting for that slot. But it's not like Garganackle needs Terra, it just really, really likes having Terra. So it's not the end of the world. Mismagius was picked up over the Terra Revivroom, Tentacruel stayed on both, the Hisuian Avalugg is now a Klefki, and the Jolteon and Uxie are now an Altaria. So basically, I feel like this team might potentially struggle in terms of like a cohesive game plan every week, because like you can say the game plan is get up spikes with the Suirot and then weaken stuff with Bloodmoon, clean with Valiant, Terraments. And like that's all fun and games in theory, but with a Suirot you really want a ghost that's good at spin blocking, like Golden Go or Annihilate or Dragapult. But the ghost on this team is Mismagius. So Mismagius kind of just folds to any physical attack ever, even if you try to do the funny, the Colbur physically defensive Mismagius sets. Like they're funny and they're fun. Sometimes they're good, but they're not practical. You certainly can't bring it as a blocker every game. Not to mention, this team dropped the Donphan, which is like one of the better spinners in the format, and then picked up an Orgerpon Hearthflame, which is super, super Rocks weak. And so now, this team, not only is it going to struggle to keep its own hazards on the field, it's going to struggle to get rid of the hazards the opponent sets up. So, when I'm looking at this team, and I see an Orgerpon Hearthflame and a Terraments, my immediate reaction is I'm getting rocks up as soon as possible. So that way the Ments at least takes rocks damage before it has to Terra. And then, basically, when... that is ups and downs, because if your opening is super telegraphed, then a team like this can take advantage of it. But yeah, like Iron Valiant Bloodmoon, I think is going to go absolutely crazy this season. Bloodmoon is like the unwallable Pokemon. Everyone knows that. The way to play around it is to just not let it attack. You just stay aggressive. But when you have guys like Garganackle, Hisuian Samurott, and Terraments that can kind of punish aggression a little bit, especially that Garganackle. It can make it really easy for teams to kind of fall in a loop against Garganackle. I also like the idea that Terra Garg can force Covert Cloaks onto guys, so guys like Ments don't have to worry about some resist berries, or Bloodmoon doesn't have to worry about Assault Vest sometimes. It all really just depends. Overall, I think this team's going to be pretty good. I think this team could perform well this season. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Some things I can see with this team, the top four, like you've already mentioned, those are four that they'll put in work no matter what situation you put them in. They demand respect for anything that you do. Even Garg, you can throw that in there. Like you mentioned, the Covert Cloak, you're going to have to be running that in some special circumstances. But I agree with a lot of the moves here. You make your team much more rock weak, especially getting rid of that Donphan. Bringing in Orgerpon Hearthflame, you're just making yourself, you're giving yourself more exploitable weaknesses, which it's going to be harder to overcome, especially in those mid games where things are getting chipped down. You have your Ursaluna in, and it's taken a little bit of chip from rocks, and you just put it in range of something being able to come in and revenge and potentially set up their own potential end game. That's some situations that you're kind of putting yourself in by removing the Donphan and putting everything on Tentacruel, which is an exploitable rapid spinner. It doesn't really have anything to punish those ghost types other than maybe getting a poison off here and there. And that's another thing. You're really setting yourself up for predictability, especially with Tentacruel can be subjugated to running boots a lot of times. You know it's going to come in and use Rapid Spin. Assault Vest is something that can run sometimes, but there's a lot of predictability that can be run. Your team might be kind of locked into boots a lot of the time, which can be exploitable. So I think that there's going to be some really high highs, especially I really like the idea of running Terrace Elements and Samurott. Hammer on those top three, they really enable a lot of offense, but we'll see if the supporting pieces can kind of put everything together for this team.
All right. And with that, I think we're going to move on to our first actual placement in the power rankings, our number 13 team, the Clonbrook Kyogres. The last 2 weeks, Clonbrook played against the Scarborough Sceptiles and the New York Nickits. Now, week 1 against Scarborough, if I remember correctly, he kind of just got swept by Terra Fire, Dragon Dance, Necrozma. Pretty sure that's just exactly what happened. The game was pretty short. He just didn't have the tools to deal with it. The Sun just kind of made it even harder for him to deal with. His own Sun, rather, made it even harder for him to deal with the other, with Geo's Necrozma. This last week, though, week 2, he played the New York Nickits, which is the other Sun team in the Sunset Division. And it was Sun v Sun, and something we talked about in the preseason power rankings was that we didn't think this team, for a Sun team, had enough Sun abusers. Like, there's Cinderace, and there's Terra Venusaur. That's it. And then he goes against the other Sun team, which has more Sun abusers, and in my opinion, better Sun abusers. And the team with the better Sun abusers won. Like, it's as simple as that. Chiyu put in work, and then I forget what else cleaned up the game, because Chiyu kind of went down a little bit early. No, actually, it looks like it was mostly just Chiyu. And then, yeah, I do remember towards the beginning of the game, Clonbrook's Venusaur was cooking Caleb a little bit, but it wasn't enough because there weren't enough Sun turns, because Torkoal went down pretty early, I think. And the Venusaur was Life Orb, so it was on a timer. And so basically once that offense petered out, Caleb's own offense really just kind of cleaned up after that. The Terrachi was putting in a lot of work. I think it was just spamming Scarf, Terra Fire, Fire Blast, if I remember correctly. But yeah, overall, basically, I think this team is struggling because it's trying to pull itself in like too many different directions. You're trying to do the kind of like a priority spam between Scizor and Mamoswine, but you also have Chili Reception on a Sun team. And for a Sun team, you only have one real abuser, one pseudo abuser, and Cinderace. There's no real top guy. Like, Darkrai is cool, but it's a lot better as like a second guy. And so basically with that, it's going to kind of make it hard for this team to have a game plan week to week, because like nothing's here working together. They're all pulling each other in opposite directions. I think Zapdos is cool on a Sun team because Weather Ball Fire is like interesting, but I don't think it actually does anything for Zapdos. And if anything, I think the most Zapdos does on this team is not let the Rain team have it. And which is like nice, because like if he goes against the Rain matchup this, see if he does. He doesn't even go against the Rain matchup this season, so that's kind of unfortunate. I just feel like a lot of these guys don't make a whole lot of sense together. Maybe Clonbrook can do something with it the rest of the season, but for now, I just don't see the game plan. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I think it's like you mentioned. There's just a lot of anti-synergistic pieces. You have a Torkoal on the same team as a Scizor and no real plan for absorption outside of Slowking. Slowking, you mentioned the Chili Reception. The only thing that really takes advantage of Chili Reception, you have Mamoswine getting that defense boost. Como-O could come in and do some setup, but outside of that, that's really about all you see being able to really abuse any kind of Chili Reception shenanigans. I do like a lot of pieces on this team, but as much as I like the pieces individually, I think they just don't really... the pieces don't really fit together. I really like the idea of Como-O with Terra. You can do a ton of things with this guy. There's just so much potential for it, I feel like, but it needs a supporting cast that pushes its end goal to the maximum. And this team, I feel like there are some of those pieces there, but it's just there's other pieces that take away from that end goal. You mentioned Darkrai. I don't think it's a number one option. I think it's really good at breaking mid game. I think it can even set up and clean in the late game if you really need it to. And it might be forced into that situation sometimes, but I agree. I think Zapdos on a Sun team is actually an interesting choice. You're not going to get full Hurricane potential, but that's not the big reason why a lot of people draft Zapdos. You kind of have it there for para spam, absorbing a lot of hits. So I think that this team can be interesting, but until I feel like there's some changes that need to be made to kind of bring the pieces together, make some pieces fit. But otherwise, as it stands right now, I think there's going to be more trouble down the road for this team.
One more thing I want to add before we move on is I think probably the best change you could make to this team if you're looking to make changes, Clonbrook, is drop Sun. Like, there's so little investment in it point-wise on the team. You could just drop Torkoal and Venusaur, grab some other stuff to, like, kind of patch up some of your weaknesses, and all of a sudden the team's looking a lot better. Because, like, now there's not as much anti-synergy. Cinderace can lean into more of its strength as, like, a standalone Pokemon. Zapdos can click Hurricane again. Como can shine as a Terra guy. Darkrai can maybe... I don't think it really affects Darkrai that much. Or Scizor. Slowking, it lets it click Chili without feeling like it's shooting the rest of the head. And Mamoswine can, like, receive those Chili receptions a little bit better. So, like, honestly, if you just change a bit from Sun to something a little bit less gimmicky, I feel like the team could, like, really with just 2 slot changes. Is there anything else you want to add?
One thing I do want to add, Donphan is back on the board here. And that's one thing that I think if you just make the change for Torkoal and maybe finagle some pieces here, Donphan can really help this team out, especially giving you a backup ground type to that Mamoswine, getting rid of some rocks. That's a piece that I could see working really well for this team.
I absolutely agree. All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 12 team, the Pittsburgh Scizors. This is our second of 3 weather teams, Sunset, and 2 of those 3 weather teams are at the bottom of the ranking. So I think once again we can safely say that weather is not doing great in PBO, at least in Sunset. The first game was against Syracuse, and honestly, I kind of just think it was mostly just a bad matchup in that regard. He played against Rillaboom and Terra Iron Hands, and, like, what is a rain team like this supposed to do against Rillaboom? Like, you can say Iron Crown, but then you look at the numbers. I think it was Life Orb Woodhammer is, like, piecing that thing up. Intimidate Overquill is nice, but then you're not doing the Swift Swim stuff. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how the game... Like, I remember how the game went from Syracuse's perspective, but I don't really know exactly what Pittsburgh could have done to avoid it. I think... Like, Rain is, like, okay. I just feel like your Swift Swimmers are kind of not the greatest. Like, Overquill is really good on a Rain team. I think that's really good. Basculegion is, like, okay. I kind of would have preferred something like Barraskewda if you're looking to, like, really lean into the Rain, like Terra Barraskewda. Or if you're trying to keep a budget option, you could do, like, Terra Floatzel. But then, like, you have Terra Urshifu trying to do the Rain stuff. I don't know. Terra Urshifu Rapid, in my opinion, functions a lot like guys like Palafin or Terra Chiyu. It's like, sure, technically they benefit from weather, but do you really need it? And, like, in this case, I think having Urshifu Rapid as the Terra might even be acting kind of as a detriment, just by, like, terms of opportunity cost. Like, you could have had an actual round 1 pick here. Maybe you could have had Terra Archaludon. You could have had some other stuff. Like, this might be another time where I say maybe you could drop the weather. Because, like, if you look at the top 5, those all function perfectly fine without weather. Overquill also functions perfectly fine without rain as, like, an Intimidate guy. P2 is, like, it can go on any team. It just sits there and eats hits. Tornadus is like, you would drop this in theory. So basically, all you would really need to drop would be the Pelipper, the Tornadus, and the Basculegion if you wanted to drop the identity. And then you could kind of patch it together from there. I don't know what's on the board to fill the spots you would end up needing. But, like, overall, I don't think this is a bad team. Like, I think the top 5 are really good. Sylveon's, like, okay, I guess, but I'm a Terra Raikou believer, like 100% with every fiber of my being. I love that guy. But with Terra Urshifu, I just don't really see when it's gonna shine. So like maybe if you take the Terra, either take the Terra off of Urshifu or maybe look for something else Raikou slot. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't talk about the week 2 game. It was a close game. It was against Toronto. He brought Scarf Pelipper that game, which I think was a good bring. It got the jump on a lot of things and was a good surprise factor. But it wasn't enough in the end. Like, the team just kind of struggled to clean out the game. They just cleaned it up. So I think, like, overall, this team is going to be good. I think maybe a couple changes are in order. I think weather is just it's kind of a pattern at this point for PBO. Like if you're not fully committing to weather, I feel like you don't really need to do it. Like, rain needs a lot for it to be functional. One of the pieces is Zapdos. Another piece, a lot of time, is Archelodon. And this team has neither of those. So, I don't know. I feel like maybe just reconsider the rain. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah. I don't know if... I would say rain can be... you can either lean really hard into it, or you can have pieces that don't necessarily need it, and rain can kind of just be the little boost that you can use to put yourself over the edge certain weeks. I think this team is a little bit pulling between both. You have plenty of pieces that can work outside of rain. I also like Terra Raikou. I think it should be used way more. But you do have a lot of pieces that just they really need rain to succeed really well. Basculegion's one that if you're going to use, especially like the male form, you kind of want to use that for Swift Swim potential. Overquill really appreciates it, but it can function outside of it. Tornadus is really here as your hurricane spam. That's really all there is to it. But outside of that, you do have a lot of pieces that can just put the hurt on some opponents. Like week 2, that was a fun week to watch because Porygonz was putting in work. You had Pelipper doing Pelipper things, as some commentators put it. But there were just some fun aspects to this team, and then there's some things that if you change some Pokemon, that I feel like if you add some more Pokemon that can just work functionality wise, you can work with them without the Terra. There are a lot of Pokemon on this team that they want the Terra to be truly successful, like your Iron Crown. It's been mentioned before that Iron Crown could be a really, really good Terra captain. Rapid Strike may not necessarily need the Terra, but it's definitely something that improves it. But at least from the results from week 1, kind of got splashed. Week 2, it was a fun match. It was close match, kept it really close. I think that there's a lot of interesting pieces, and it's something that week to week you could see some different results, but overall, I think that this team just there's a little bit of leeway, push and pull. There can be some cleanup, and this can be a really fun team to watch going forward.
All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 11 team, the Birmingham Buizels. Now, this team, the team you're looking at right now, not the team that they used for the last 2 weeks of their games. Instead of the Sneasler, Milo, Orgerpon, Heaton, Florges, and Knacklestack, it was Keldeo, Fezandipiti, Terraceralege, Superior, Cyclizar, and Vikavolt. With that being said, I kind of think the team now is a little bit worse. I like a lot of the individual Pokemon. I just feel like it might have leaned a little bit too much into being fat and like not having supporting pieces, I guess. Like the offense is okay. I'm not worried about the offense. There's a Sneasler and a Kyurem there, and a Water Pump. But when you have a lot of like really passive pieces, like Mandibuzz, Milo, Knacklestack, and I kind of think Heatom can be passive. I don't know. I just think Heatom's not a good Pokemon in general, but whatever. I like Florges a lot. I feel like that's a good pickup. This is really good in my opinion. Underrated, I would say. Terramew is still really good. almost pulled back a game against Cherry Hill in week 2. Kyurem is still good. Terra Treads, I feel like probably won't ever be used unless the Mew goes down early. Sneasler's better this season because we now allow Dire Claw. You're allowed to roll the dice. But yeah, the first 2 weeks with the old team, the first game was against me, and honestly, I let the game get a lot closer than it should have. It probably should have been like a 4-0 because I was trying to save things, and I ended up losing more than I gained. But basically, the team, it started out passive, and then it just it struggled to gain. It struggled to gain back a lot of ground until I accidentally let it gain back a lot of ground. And then against Cherry Hill, the team just kind of got out-fatted, I think, because that's just kind of how Cherry Hill tends to play. And then Mew tried to Dragon Dance in the game and kind of just lost. So we've seen kind of a dependence on Mew for the offense because Kyurem's come to both the games, but it hasn't gotten any kills yet. I think in the game against me, it did like 18% to Primarina and then swiftly died to Moonblast. Waterpon was on another team. That's the wrong stats I'm looking at. I feel like non-Terra Knackle Stack will never come to the game. I do like Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is really good because like being able to throw out Toxics in Gen 9 is very, very valuable, especially when your grounded poison is Sneasler. But yeah, overall, I think this team is going to it's gonna come back. Like it was kind of a rough start, but overall, I think with the changes, Birmingham's gonna be a lot more comfortable with this, and it's gonna be able to start winning some of these games. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some matchups up the road that can turn out with different results. I think that there's plenty of Mons here that this isn't a team where this is outside of Knackle Stack. You have a bunch of Pokemon that can show up to any kind of matchup. You might be relying on your fatness a little bit from a few specific Mons. Your Rotom Heat might get whittled down pretty quickly as your only fire type, your only electric type. So that's rule compression might potentially get exploited. But your weak results, they speak for themselves. The team change, I just can't. I don't really see the vision behind much of the team change outside of let's get this thing more and more offensive, more speed. Let's bring in Florigist to improve the bulk situation. Let's throw Knackle Stack in there because Salt Cure is a move that exists. Outside of that, you have Terra Mew and Terra Treads. I think Mew's just the one that's always going to be game planned around from matchup to matchup. Teams will prep for it. Teams will find a way to get past it. So that's just some stuff that I can see with this team. But I think that you're kind of just letting Kyurem hang out to dry without any kind of super crazy support. Treads isn't really going to be perfect partners with Kyurem, but otherwise, yeah, I would say that this team it's a little more curious for me, but I can see where some pieces fall, and I think that this has some interesting potential.
All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 10 team, the New York Nickits, our third and final weather team in Sunset. Now, this one is certainly doing a lot better than its contemporaries. The Terra Chiyu is beating the fraud allegations. I want to be clear. Some people have said this guy is a fraud. They are wrong. It has 5 kills in 2 games. I think that's pretty good. And yeah, basically, Terra Chiyu and Terra Walking Wake together, I think, put an insane amount of pressure on the team builder that I think a lot of teams are really just folding to right now. Week 1, New York lost to the Mew World Order, which I don't remember exactly how that game went. I'm thinking of a different game. What happened that game? Let's see if I look at the team. I think Dragapult was doing really good, and Kilo cleaned up in the end game. Oh no, it was Terra Dirge and Kilowattrel that really put the team in a pack, if I remember correctly. Which like makes sense. Kilowattrel gets Weather Ball, it can like punish a lot of stuff, and being offensive, it can just kind of punish a lot of the things that Caleb wants to do. And then last week, Caleb played Clonbrook, the Sun vs. Sun matchup, and he really just farmed with the Sun. You just throw Terrafire on Chi-Yu. You roast everything on Clonbrook's team because it doesn't have great fire resists, and you go from there. And that's exactly what he did, and it worked out really well. So basically, I think this is definitely the strongest Sun team that we have in this division. It just has better Sun abusers, which is kind of weird because it doesn't even have a chlorophyll guy. Like, not that you absolutely need a chlorophyll guy, but like it's a Sun team. It's kind of what you're built around a lot of the time. Caleb has a big advantage over the other Sun teams by the other Sun team because he has Ninetales instead of Torkoal, and Healing Wish is a really good move. It's going to help at other points in the season against Walking Wake and Chi-Yu. I do think Slowbro is like an interesting fit on the team. It's here as like token bulky water, but it's Gen 9. Bulky water meta is kind of like out, and if you have Terra Walking Wake, I think you're kind of fine in that regard. So I think if you wanted to make changes, you could drop the Ursaluna and the Slowbro, because I don't really see what they're doing here, except for Ursaluna being token ground type. Maybe find another ground type if there are any left. Or Donphan's still on the board. Donphan would actually be great because it gets you an actual spinner that's not Serena. I feel like Slowbro can be a lot of other things. If you get the Donphan, you can probably drop Serena and find another grass type. But yeah, I think even with those even without those changes, rather, this team is gonna have a decent season, especially like for weather. Next week is definitely going to be really interesting because it's the rain matchup. So honestly, we're probably going to see a drop in this team for the next power rankings, but it's not because the team is bad. It's because the schedule is kind of like crazy the next 2 weeks, where it goes against Pittsburgh and Boston, which like one of them is a terrible matchup on its face, and the other against the top team. So it's probably going to be a rough couple weeks for this upcoming stretch, but I feel like this team will probably be able to cover. You think, Kato?
Yeah, I think this team has amazing pieces put together. I think, yeah, this is the better Sun team. Just looking at all the pieces, Ninetales, you have Baton Pass, you have Healing Wish, just two really amazing support moves that you can use, especially with this team. You have an Iron Boulder that's pretty threatening. I look at the Ursaluna and Slowbro, and I do agree. I think those are two eyesores compared to the rest of the team. I love Slowbro, but it's just it's kind of dead weight, especially when it's out on the field, and it gets stuck. It becomes knockoff food. You kind of lose a lot of momentum when Slowbro comes out into the field. You have some potential with Ursaluna, but it is kind of reprising the similar roles to guys like Slitherwing, your Iron Boulder, Serena in some pinches, but I do think Donphan would be another a great pickup here. A ground type that can work better into this team. Maybe adjust your sun matchup a little better too. Not be weak to rocks, spin those away. Donphan really matches up well with that. I think going into your next match with the Rain team, I think we're going to see Walking Wake being relied on a little bit. Slitherwing and Clef might make some appearances. I think this will be an interesting matchup to watch. Boston, that's going to be a tough one to go up against, but I think that there's pieces here that we can see some really creative sets, potentially get into some really, really interesting matchups going forward. But I do think potential's here. The pieces work well. Chi-Yu is proving itself as a top dog in this format. We'll just see if they can keep proving it, keep staying consistent. They've done really well after that week 2 win against Clonbrook, and now we'll see what they can do going forward.
One more thing I want to add before we move on is we mentioned dropping the Ursaluna Slowbro and then maybe the Serena if you get the Donphan. If you do get the Donphan and you drop the Serena, grab a Chlorophyll guy. Even if it's a cheap one, even if it's a fucking Scovillain, if it's Victory Bell, you at least have that kind of speed pressure now on the other team, and it can be really, really nice for a team. Even if you don't tear it, even if you barely bring it, I think forcing them to prep for it in some way or another is going to be really nice. All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 9 team, being a team we were just talking a little bit about, the Mew World Order. Now this team's climbing up a little bit because of the 1-1 teams. This is the last of the 1-1 teams. No, it's not. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, the team that they lost to is the Boston Banettes, which, as I said before, is a top team. So like, losing to that is not something to be ashamed of. But that being said, all the things that I had issues with this team in the preseason analysis still stay true right now. I feel like there's not that much that Dragapult is supporting on this team, and if Dragapult's not supporting things, then it's not worth the 200 points or whatever we paid for it this season. Glimmora is like kind of in a similar boat. I feel like on this team, it's probably going to want to be leaning into those offensive capabilities a little bit more, like Rock Polish. Maybe not even Rock Polish, just like be offensive and break. So things like King Gambit and Kilowattrel can clean. Skeledirge, I think Terra Skeledirge is a sleeper good option. Some people call Skeledirge like noob bait sometimes. I think it's good. I do think without Terra it can be bait, but with Terra it's definitely solid. Like, it's just a catch-all unaware check. You can make it any type you want, check anything in the game basically. So Skeledirge is going to be very, like, one of the corner pieces, like one of the cornerstones of this team, if I had to guess. I do still think non-Terra Orgerpon is kind of shit. I think non-Terra Heracross is kind of shit. King Gambit's kind of shit. I feel like those guys probably aren't going to be getting as much value as you're getting for the amount of points that they are, especially on a team like this. They did win against the New York Nickits. I think it was mostly just a Dragapult showcase to Skeledirge and Kilowattrel cleaning up. I think, I don't remember 100%. I remember Swampert was also putting in some work towards the end of the game. But yeah, I feel like this team's definitely going to do pretty well. Next week they're playing against Clonbrook, which should probably be a win. After that is the Philadelphia PZs, which honestly I have no idea how a game like that's gonna go, because we haven't seen Philadelphia play, and we don't know. I haven't even thought about the matchup too much. But anyways, this team I feel like is going to be pretty good, but maybe consider patching up some of the holes. What do you think, Kauto?
Yeah, I think going into especially that week 4 matchup with the Porygonz, do have a lot of setup coming into that matchup. You have the potential for Valiant, Salamence, Ursaluna has a potential for setup. There's a lot of things that Skeledirge is going to have to be tasked with taking on, and you're going to have to be choosing between, am I going to invest in defensive bulk? Am I going to invest in special defensive bulk? And where are my pieces going to fall to cover those weaknesses? So Skeledirge is going to be, you're right, it's going to be the cornerstone of this team. With that Terra, it's going to be tasked with taking on a lot of things. It's going to be tasked with spreading willows, using Hex, the whole Skeledirge shtick. It's going to be doing that in overtime, especially in week 4 and 5. So hopefully that the pieces that are here, your Swamperts, your Hatteran, Orgerpon is going to have to do some support tech, but Dragapult's going to be another important one. I think Screen's Pult is going to be potential for some interesting end games, mid games. I like the prospects of offensive Glimmora. I think that's slept on quite a bit. And then Gambit, without Terra, you really know it's just going to do one of two things: your Supreme Overlord and Game Sucker Punch mind games, or if it's webs, then you're bringing Defiant in most cases, which those are two pretty easy to telegraph situations. But otherwise, your Kilo, in a lot of games, you want a Terra Skeledirge, and Kilo really benefits from that Terra. So we'll see what the game plan is going into this this matchup with a lot of potential setup sweepers, and if Skeledirge can keep enough health up to handle all of those going forward here.
Alrighty, we're going to move on to our number 8 team, the Cherry Hill Bellsprouts. Now, if we look at the schedule and we see the loss and the win, the loss was again to the Boston Banettes. Again, there's no shame in a loss like that. And then after that, he beat the Birmingham Buizels. Now, oh yeah, Espeon was the one. Terra Espeon was what mostly put Birmingham in a pack. It wasn't Outbulked, it was the Espeon. Terra Heatran honestly feels like it should be coming more than the Terra Espeon in my opinion. But the last few games have mostly just been Espeon games. I think the game against Boston wasn't that wasn't the case, but against Birmingham and spoiler alert in the Blasphemous game as well, which happened this morning, it was Terra Espeon, and in one of those games it worked really well, and in the other one it didn't. But we'll talk about that one in the next power rankings. In the meantime, I think Tusk Bundle Heatran is like kind of an insane top 3. I'm kind of a bundle hater myself, but I'm not going to penalize someone for having it. Tusk being the best spinner in the format alongside Bundle being weak to rocks and being one of the best speed controls in the format is really nice, plus Terra Heatran being a really flexible catch-all guy. I think Rotom Wash and Iron Bundle together, it's really nice to have double waters. It's not really nice when between the two, they still only have one stab option in Hydro. It can make games where you need to click a water move feel really, really terrible and really risky. But it's still double waters. I love double water playstyles. I usually have 2 waters on my. But overall, like the team is still really strong. I think the weakest parts of the team are probably non-Terra Wo-Chien, which hurts to say because I love Wo-Chien, and Volcarona, because Volcarona is like the most telegraphed guy of all time. Overall, I feel like the next few weeks are probably going to be pretty tough for Cherry Hill, but then it kind of starts mellowing out more towards the end of the season. So overall, I think this Cherry Hill is probably going to finish somewhere in the middle of the road, which is kind of just where we have them. So yeah, I think that it's going to be a good layout for the rest of the season. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I think you're going up against Rain in week 4. I think that this kind of matchup, you have Frotum, you have Bundle, Tusk is going to do Tusk things. I think that there's some interesting interactions to have to worry about. What are we going to see from Heatran going forward? But I really, really appreciate guys like Espeon. Espeon being up there on the kill leader rankings. I really like seeing those little guys getting the spotlight from time to time. Mostly it's dominated by, especially this season with the power level that we have going on. You see a lot of your really high Terra captains taking some of the spotlight, but I do like seeing this Espeon getting some love, especially early on in the season. I think that's a perfect opportunity for it to see that, but I think Heatran, you're going to have to rely on that quite a bit going forward. And outside of that, I think this team is pretty well put together. You nailed the head on that top 3 being pretty crazy. You have Ditto. Ditto's going to do Ditto things. That's about it. That's about as much as I can say on that. Your trades week 1, I see some of the stuff that you're going for. You pick up Espeon. It helps out the Volcarona a little bit. Helps out quite a bit of your team, actually, but you're losing Araquanid, that other water type, the Sticky Web's potential, Amoonguss, Okidogi. There's some trades that were made. There's some swaps, but I think that this team still is pretty well constructed, and I think that there's a lot to look forward for them, especially going into the next couple of weeks.
Alrighty, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 7 team, officially the top half, the Scarborough Sceptiles. Now, Gio had a very good week, a very good week 1 against Clonbrook, where his Dragon Dance Necrozma took 4 kills, I think. But the week right after, he played against Blasphemous Blacephalons, who kind of put him in a pack. Which is like not even to his own fault. Blasphemous just played the game really well. He had a really heat weakness policy, Swords Dance, Infernape, which was like it was poised to like basically win the game on the spot. But Blasphemous found a line where I think he didn't even have to sack anything. Maybe he sacked I think he sacked the Thunder. That was it. Alamola was able to come in, eat a +4 Thunder Punch, and then flip turn for the kill, which was kind of crazy. I do think the team kind of suffers from the not having a top guy syndrome, which, like, honestly, I don't feel like every team needs a top guy. I think they're kind of overrated sometimes. But Meowscarada is as close we got. And, like, that can be a top guy. But it's kind of hard to, like, build around it, I guess. You use it to build around other things, and I guess the team's just built around Terra Necrozma, which you can clearly see that by it having 4 kills already. Terra Landers is also a big threat. I can't imagine it'll come too much, but it's something that's like, on a guy like Landers, it's nice to have a guy like that in your back pocket in case you need it. If, God forbid, your Necrozma goes down early, or you just need to Terra Steel in front of the bundle or something. Just something like that can make Terra Landers a really good backup option on a team like this. I feel like some of these guys are probably a little bit unnecessary, although I think overall, the transactions this team made, he dropped Rotom Heat, Quagsire, and Ice Cube for Raging Bolt and Masquerain. I feel like that is absolutely 100% an upgrade from what it was before. I still don't think some of these guys are very good. Like, I'm not a Grafaiai enjoyer. I think Regieleki is kind of redundant with Raging Bolt now on the team. So, like, maybe if you just dropped those two and found, like, a couple other guys that are kind of cheap but still come to games, this team could be really nasty. I do think the team feels slightly Rocks weak, or like not even Rocks weak, mostly Hazards weak. It's just the Enamorus that's weak to Rocks. But like if this team gets Spike stacked and then Regieleki, okay, you know what? I'm gonna take all that back. I apologize. Regieleki's a really good spinner because nothing can spin block it because you have to go into a type. So it seems not that Hazard weak. But if Regieleki doesn't come, then it starts to feel it a bit, I guess. Overall, I think this team is definitely going to have a good season. It goes against me this next week. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting game. But overall, like it's definitely going to have a good season. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team in playoffs at all. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I look at this team. I see a really, really well-constructed team around this Necrozma. Meow just being able to weaken those psychic types that want to take hits from Necrozma. Spamming knockoff. Landorus punching holes in teams. Enamorus scaring out those dark types. Infernape filling in that role a little bit too. I think that this team is really, really, really well-constructed, especially in your top 8. And then you have the Grafaiai, the Masquerain. I think Grafaiai is just it. I'll be honest, it's just filling in that ground poison check mark. I'm guilty of that, but Grafaiai, it's super exploitable. Toxic spikes could really mess this team up if you don't go something like Terra Steel on Necrozma. That can end your sweep super early. I do like the Regieleki. I think that's one thing that's really holding this team together. It's a fake speed tier, but it is something that can kind of save you in a check, especially against something like a bundle that can threaten your Meow, your Enamorus, Infernape, a lot of your fast threats. So I think that's something that they appreciate quite a bit. But overall, you're doing the job of you have your Terra Necrozma, and that's kind of your top dog. Maybe not the top dog on the draft board, but it's your top dog, and you're really making it out to be that situation. So I think that there's a lot of good things here. Some things that might hold it back, but outside of that, it's really just the sky's the limit for this team, in my opinion. But the record stands for what it is. It was a really good game against Blasphemous. They just played it really well. So we'll see how the remaining matchups going forward are.
All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our number 6 team, the Syracuse Snorlax. Now, his first game, I talked about it a little bit when we talked about Pittsburgh. It was a 5-0. Rillaboom basically led off, clicked Woodhammer and Grassy Glide 3 times, got 3 kills. Then he went straight in Iron Hands, tear it into something, I don't even remember, and they got 3 more kills and the game was over. It was a very quick first game. We didn't get to see a lot of the team identity. It was really just those 2 guys putting Pittsburgh in a pack. And who would have thought the grass type and the electric type destroyed Rain? But the week after, he played me. And honestly, I feel like it was kind of just a disrespect to Cornerstone Showcase. Like, basically what happened was we did some funny positioning stuff in the early game, and then I get Cornerstone in against, I think it was the Moth, and I had my Sturdy intact. So I basically just clicked Cudgel, and it did 49% of the Gliscor and got its Toxic Orb activated that turn. And I immediately click SD because I kind of expected I expected either a U-turn, an Earthquake, or a Protect. And all of those things basically just let me get a free SD. And he clicked Stealth Rock that turn instead, which in my opinion was probably the worst possible outcome for him, because now I'm at +2 and you've done nothing to even break my Cornerstone Sturdy. And then I just, I click Cudgel, I kill the Gliscor. Iron Hands comes out, doesn't Terra, I play rough for 92%. It Drain Punches to get some HP back. I Cudgel it, and then it dies, and then Iron Moth comes out. And the Iron Moth had already burned its booster speed, and basically it just came down to an instant speed tie. I took the speed tie, he took the speed tie. If Cornerstone won that speed tie, it would have gotten 6 kills. There was nothing you could have done about it. But Iron Moth didn't win the speed tie, and so he got lucky in that regard, and the game ended up being a lot closer. But at that point, Iron Moth didn't have enough firepower to clean up the rest of the team, and Blastoise was the main breaker left. And once those two were both dealt with, Shaman cleaned up. And so basically, it came down to the team not being able to hold up as much against the offense as it looks like, which makes sense. Even though there's a Gliscor and a Bronzong, they can't do everything against setup. Bronzong was a setup variant itself that game, so it kind of just got sub-seeded by Shaman, and Gliscor made one mistake and cost half the team. And so basically, I think it really was a volatile game, so it's hard to say it was a terribly played game when it was just one turn that cost him a lot of his team. So I feel like this is why he's rated a little bit higher than 1-1 teams. Because he still played well overall. It was just one turn that really cost him a lot. But if we look at the rest of his schedule, he goes against Kuma next week, which is a really tough matchup and is the anticipated game of the week, so keep a lookout for that one. Then after that is the Blasphemous Blacephalons, which is another good team, as we've been talking about how they played against Geo. Then he plays against Geo, Mew World Order, Philadelphia PZs, and Boston. I feel like this is probably one of the tougher schedules that we have this season. I feel like of all the teams we've looked at so far, I haven't seen one that's tougher than this. So Syracuse, I wish you the best of luck this season. I think you will do well because you were a top team last season, and I expect you to be this season as well. No pressure. I still think it's a good team. It's built well, except for I think Gladius should probably go. I think that guy's pretty bad. But still, it's still a good team overall. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I like the team construction here. I'm just looking at you mentioned those upcoming matches. This is as much of a gauntlet as I've seen for a remaining schedule here. You had Pittsburgh leading off, and then that pretty much starts off your walk into the Valley of the Shadows is one way to put it. You got a lot to work with on your team. You have a lot of firepower. You have a lot of thickness. Bronzong really holds this team well together. In previous matches, your Rillaboom just kind of took over in that week 1. Hands has just been doing its job at this point. Your combo of Terra on Iron Hands, your Terra on Iron Moth, really good things to have. Plenty of potential there. I'm excited to see just in the next, let's call it the rest of the season, there's just game of the week potential going on. We can see a lot of fantastic matchups. I'm really excited to see what this team results in. We'll see what they can do.
All right. And with that, we're going to move on to our number 5 team, the Blasphemous Blacephalons. This is another team we've talked a lot about so far, I feel like. Or at least we talked about the game that he had with Geo a lot. Because really, he's just been playing really well. I'm going to be straight up. I don't really like the way Blasphemous drafts. But I can't argue with the results, right? Blasphemous makes some weird drafts, but every time the sets are on point, even if they're a little funky. In the game against Cherry Hill, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the game yet. Banded Aloe came to the game, and it fucking cooked. It destroyed the team. So I can't argue with it. Like, I think the play has actually been really incredible from Blasphemous, even if it's not conventional, quote unquote. Like, the loss was to Kuma week 1, but honestly, he was outplaying him most of the game. Blasphemous was beating Kuma for the majority of the game, and the only reason he lost is because Kuma's Greninja got a Battle Bond boost at the end of the game, and he had just the right Terra type to beat the Corviknight in the end game. And so basically, if like all of those factors hadn't been perfectly lined up, Kuma would have lost. I think there was a 50-50 mind game at the end too between a Thundurus and a Corviknight swap. But basically, Kuma got the 50-50 right, and it cost Blasphemous the game. And against a guy like Terra Greninja, you can't afford to lose those 50-50s. But overall, I would absolutely expect this team to be not only a playoff contender, but like I wouldn't be surprised to see this be a top seed by the end of the season, because even if the team isn't conventionally strong, the play has been like more than making up for that, especially compared to everyone else in the division. Like in terms of play, I would put this probably top 1, maybe top 2 in the division, but back to the matter is he lost to Kuma, so we can't put him too terribly high right now. Yeah, what do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I just, from the games that I've watched from Blasphemous, this has been one of my favorite teams to watch. Just, there have been some, you mentioned the Banded Aloe, that was a crazy set. Claude has put in work. Dio just does what it needs to do. Moon is something that needs to be accounted for every week, and it's showing. I love Terra Thundurus as a Terra captain. I think that's such a scary threat. Claude having the Terra is something that's interesting to me. I probably wouldn't use it myself, but going up against a Terra Claude, I probably wouldn't want to see that on my opponent's side. But you have Corviknight, you have Indeedee, you have Rotom Frost, you have Aloe, Claude, just so much fat to go along with this Blaziken, your Roaring Moon, your Dio Speed, your Thundurus Theory, and there's just so much to worry about on both sides of the spectrum, and I think that's shown especially through these first 2-3 weeks, and I'm really, really excited to see what potential there is for the next upcoming couple of weeks here. I'm really excited to see what they have cooking up in store for it. Let's see, we got...
Hold on. He's a mute, hold on.
Oh man, I forgot I was muted. Anyway.
I figured you just forgot.
You're good. All right, Toronto.
Anyways,
whenever you're ready.
All right, we're gonna move on to our number 4 team, the Toronto Staraptors. This is the first of our undefeated teams so far. And the first week he had the Sneasler, the Whimsicott, the Umbreon, the Staraptor, and the Crocodile. And I think in week 2 he had the Azelf, the Hisuian Quillfish, Talonflame, Star. Now, the first week was against the Sydney Sylveons, who is now the Philadelphia Porygonz, but different teams. Basically, Hydrapple was going on a fucking tear against... it stopped Salamence sweep, it got like a couple more kills in the end game. Golden Go is really important in breaking things down in the early game, as was, I believe, Manaphy. Basically, it was a pretty like straightforward game. I think Staraptor also did some good damage before being traded away. But yeah, basically, it was a pretty handy victory, like a handily won victory, week 1. And then week 2 was against Pittsburgh, which was a very entertaining game. Scarf Azelf was putting in overtime that game. Manaphy was cooking as well. I was kind of surprised to not see the T-Tar come. I don't think... Did the T-Tar come? I don't remember.
I don't think it did.
Yeah, it did not come. No games played. So I'm kind of surprised, even though, yeah, sure, it's weak to... It's water, it's weak, like kind of a free Urshifu or whatever. Being able to reset that weather and force a Pelipper back in at some point, especially if you can get rocks up with it and throw on T-Waves with T-Tar into that kind of matchup, I feel like is really valuable. So I'm surprised to see it not come to that game. Hydrapple, I think Hydrapple can't. Yeah, Hydrapple did come to the game. I think it got probably at least a kill based on the stats I'm looking at here. I think overall, like, the team is definitely interesting. It's like not a conventional sand team, and it doesn't have it does have a spiker now. Before it didn't have a spiker. Now it has a spiker in Hisuian Quillfish, which is like a pretty good one too. Talonflame is like, whenever I see Talonflame, I think, okay, they needed speed above 150. Because it really doesn't do much else outside of that. Maybe it'll defog, maybe it'll wisp or U-turn. Like, the utility sets are kind of all it does at this point in Gen 9. It can do some Swords Dance or bulk up stuff maybe once a season, but you almost never see it. Yeah, what do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I'm just the team looks good. Trades made. I do like the T-Tar idea into that rain situation, but the game that was played, I don't think I could have asked for anything better. The Scarf Elf putting in work. The Talonflame actually got some huge value in that game against Pittsburgh, being able to burn quite a bit, getting a lot of value there. Manaphy put in some work. Hydrapple, I remember, did some stuff. You have Arcanine cleaning up the late game, which was really important there. Going for that head smash to finish off the game was ballsy, and I love it. Probably could have clicked a safer move, but it's you got to go out with a bang, especially if it's going to be from a head smash. So I love the results of what they've done so far. I think the week one going up against Sydney, it was just it was a good matchup for them. They took advantage of what they had. They played really well, and they just they kind of handled their business. Going up into the next few weeks, you have some teams on the lower side of the rankings on the leaderboards. We'll see if they can keep the consistency up, but I think that they have the pieces to keep the consistency going, and we'll see what they can do from there. But that's about all I have to say on them.
Alrighty, moving on to our number 3 spot. It's me, the Charleston Chestnaughts. I already talked about both of these games pretty in-depth already, so I don't want to talk about them too much. Basically, my team so far has just been a lot of team players. No one Pokemon's really taking over and like hogging all the kills from everyone else. Gouging has a couple kills, Cornerstone has a couple kills, Primarina has a couple kills. Past that, there's not that much. It's been crazy. Did make a couple transactions. Noivern is no more. I got an actual hazard control guy in Cyclizar. And now, instead of Goldtrace, I have Terra Espathra, which honestly is kind of a lateral, but I kind of just wanted to try Espathra. I think the rest of the team is like, this is another team where it's like there's no proper top guy. Like, I think Gouging Fire is like fine as that role, but most people nowadays would say Gouging Fire is like a good like round 2 guy. But I still think the team works well with it, especially with guys like Pecharunt to like Parting Shot and get in guys like Gouging Fire and Cornerstone for free setup. I think Crocodile and Metagross are really good like roll compression guys together, especially like I think Primarina, Crocodile, and Metagross is like a pretty awesome mid-tier utility, like flexibility core, I guess, if that's a thing. I think Shaman has kind of been showing people why I think it's underrated. The week 1, I brought Scarf and kind of threw it away, which was not helping my case. But week 2, I brought Subseed, and it like kind of 3v1'd at the end. I guess it was 2v1'd, but people were questioning, like in the live comm, why I brought Air Slash instead of like Dazzling Gleam or Earth Power on my Shaman. It's because there was Rillaboom on the bench, in case you guys didn't know. Subseed kind of needs to hit the grass type. So, thank you,
We did not
Orange,
know.
my number 1 hater.
It would help.
Yeah, it would help people to hit the grass type. But yeah, going forward, I think my middle... I have a pretty rough middle stretch here these next 3 weeks, I think. And then Philadelphia PZs is like a big question mark. Boston's going to be tough, and Clonbrook should be a pretty good matchup for me, if I had to guess. Overall, I think the rest of my season is pretty good. I haven't gotten a lot of use out of Lantern yet. I haven't even thought about putting it on the build. So I hope to see getting some use out of that guy. And I hope to change everyone's minds on Shaman, because that guy is the GOAT. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I think as much as you've said, the team is what the team is at this point. I'm not really on the Gouging Fire bandwagon, but I can see where people would like it in some spots. I want to see some more Shaman action. I love seeing these speedy grass types just messing everyone up, even though many people won't. They'll sleep on them. That's what's happening. I love the Orgerpon to the moon for me. Pecharunt, I love that. Outside of it, some really good matches week 1 and 2. Some well played sets. You have some upcoming this is another gauntlet, in my opinion, going up against Geo, Tokyo. Jerry Hill is going to be an interesting one. We'll see how that one goes, but yeah, I think that there's some good stuff here. Mons that have been performing are kind of expected to do so. We'll see if Shaman can continue to prove the doubters wrong, and hopefully we'll get some interesting Lantern gameplay coming up.
Fuck. Anyway, moving on to our number 2 team, the Tokyo Teddiursas. Sunset's golden child, as everyone. His team, we knew it was good. It's definitely full of a lot of comfort picks for Kuma, and the results are proving that right now. Terapagos and Terra Greninja are both guys he's very comfortable with, as well as Dragonite, especially Dragonite. Past that, he's not comfortable with Tinglu, but he's using it well so far. He's just kind of, I think he's spamming hazards with it so far. This week one against Blasphemous was a very close game, probably one of the best games see all season, honestly. Very close game. And honestly, he kind of was getting bailed by Greninja. He probably shouldn't have won, but like he found his line like pretty early into the late game, and then he stuck with it and he played to his outs and he did really well and he won the game. After that, he played against Sydney, who honestly could have won if he brought a better Iron Valiant set. If he brought like his Iron Valiant was like Shadow Claw instead of knockoff, and it didn't have CC, which was really interesting into a Tinglu and a Terapagos. So I don't know. I think Terra Sinistra is a really good backup to have for Greninja, because Sinistra is going to be coming to a lot of games just by virtue of being the only real ground resist on this team. Sorry, Dragonite, everything gets coverage to hit you nowadays. But yeah, basically, the Greninja's been like stealing the spotlight of this team so far. It has 7 kills in 2 weeks, which puts it on track to shatter the kill record in PBO, which is held by also Kuma's Qianpao from Season 5, which went 18-2. But if we do the math right now, this Greninja is it's poised to get 28 kills by the end of the season, which I don't think will happen, but like that's just where it's heading right now. Point being, this Greninja is going to be staying towards the top of the kill leaderboard all season. Terapagos is probably also going to be his second kill leader, and then he probably won't have too many kills among his other guys. They'll probably be mostly unremarkable in that regard, but that doesn't mean they're not doing anything. It just means they're setting up the rest of the game to go to the Greninja and Terapagos. If we look at the rest of his schedule, he's got a rough stretch for the next like 3 weeks, and then after that it kind of starts to ease up for him a little bit. So if he ends up dropping a little bit over the next couple of power rankings, I wouldn't be too surprised, but he's definitely going to end probably in the top 3 if I had to guess, like overall. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I think that position is a good one for him. I think Gren has kind of been stealing the spotlight from his team. There's a lot of pieces that I really want to see work out really well. Dragonites is something that can steal the show on occasions. You get the right set, the right matchup, and it can roll some teams, or it can just crumble and fall apart. But yeah, Grant is just showing why it's one of the best Terra captains in this format that we've got here. I want to see more of Jirachi, Sinistra. There's just a lot of things that I want to see more of. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with this team, but when you have a guy like Greninja, you have a guy like Terapagos, you're going to get those results one way or another. But I do want to see more of this team. I think that this has potential to be insanely well-rounded, but that matchup with Blacephalon was crazy fun to watch. Sydney was just I think that the sets that Sydney brought were just a little lackluster, but just looking forward, yeah, I think that there's some your week 3 looks like an amazing matchup. 4, 5, I think that there's going to be some really entertaining battles, especially here in the next few weeks. So I'm excited to see what Tokyo can do with this team here.
Alrighty. And with that, we're going to move on to our number 1 team. To absolutely nobody's surprise, the Boston Banettes. Now, in the preseason power rankings, we thought this team was going to smash. And so it won't shock anyone that it has been smashing so far. Week 1 was it was a really interesting game against Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill's Heatran was really carrying the team on its back in that matchup. It was spamming Taunt, wasn't letting the Glow King get out of there, wasn't letting Tornadus get away with anything, or Cryogonal. But basically what ended up happening was, even though Heatran was like stopping Raven's team from doing anything, it wasn't really making any progress. So I think there were a few turns where, like, if Cherry Hill had like gotten the order of operations right, he could have Magma Stormed into taunting like the Glow King, and then it just wouldn't have been able to get out to get a trap and kill it. But that didn't end up happening. And so basically, Raven's team was able to win the war of attrition, and he brought a really interesting Palafin set, I think. It was a sub-bulk up Drain Punch Acro, so just stabless Palafin, which is interesting because Palafin loves spamming its stabs. But yeah, it was working. I think Annihilate was also putting in some work in the game, but I don't remember for sure. And then last week against the Mew World Order against June, I think it was mostly just Annihilate going kind of crazy, because I remember it was clicking Rage Fist into Terra Fairy Dirge. I don't remember too much about that game, but I remember Raven won that one a lot more handily than he did his week 1 game. Because even though the diffs are the same week 1 to week 2, the game against Cherry Hill was a long fought battle that Raven, even though it was 3-0, it was a lot closer, at least in the early game. But in the game against Mew World Order, it really wasn't as close. So overall, like, honestly, this team, the next few weeks, like the next 2 weeks, are like definitely the easier stretch for Raven. But the last 4 weeks, it's literally top half teams. It's Kuma into Blasphemous and Syracuse. Like, Blasphemous and Syracuse are like both guys that I think kind of just got a little bit screwed out of their for their losses. They aren't losses that were like bad losses. Syracuse, he was my favorite to win the whole thing last season. I still think he could win the whole thing. Blasphemous's play has just been on point. So I think those last 4 teams are like some of the most dangerous teams in the division. He has to do them back to back to back to back. So if anyone can beat him at any point in this season, it's going to be one of these 4 teams. Past that, I feel like Raven's definitely sitting comfortable. He's going to be a shoo-in for playoffs, and he's probably going to be the favorite for champion going forward. What do you think, Kowtow?
Yeah, I think Raven's got... when I initially had seen this team after draft, my mind went straight to, this is just highway robbery. I don't see how a team like this can be constructed in a draft format and get away with it clean-handed. There was some shenanigans being pulled, I'm sure, but in all reality, the team has just been performing how you would expect. Week 1 was a really nice matchup. It was a really hard-fought battle between both teams, and week 2, New World Order just didn't have enough firepower to contend with this team. It was just too much. Ape went, like you mentioned, Rage Fist just did his job, punched holes. You had Glow King absorbing every single hit underneath the entire sun. But I do think that this team is a little more... I don't think it's untouchable by any standards. I think that there's plenty of things that you can do to whittle this team down. I think that there are, especially within the top 6, there are teams that can easily go toe-to-toe with this team from Raven. But as it stands right now, they're 2-0. They have, in my opinion, one of the scariest teams, and I think that they'll continue to show that. But I do think that this is an attainable top spot from any of the teams in the division. I don't think that this is a lock in any stretch of the imagination, especially going into your latter half of the schedule. But we'll see if we can get some fun matchups going into your week 3 and your week 4.
All right, before we wrap this up, one more thing I want to say about Boston's team. In case you haven't noticed it already, this team is 100% going to be a team that's talked about for many seasons. It's going to be among the likes of Oz Season 5 team, Caleb Season 6 team, teams like that. Teams that were like, you just look at them and it's like, how did you get OU and Ubers in a bottle? Like, this is supposed to be regular Paldex. And this is just what he ended up with. So honestly, I would be surprised. Like you said, teams can go toe to toe with this. I think they can, but I think if Raven plays well, there's no reason for him to lose to anyone in this division. Honestly.
Yeah, with well played, I could see just
Yeah, like, I think for him to lose game would be him probably choking the games. But yeah, that is the Sunset Week 2 power rankings. Thank you all for bearing with us. I've been the Charleston Chestnaughts. And thank you guys for watching. Oh, also, and the Columbus Conquerors Cowtown. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.